Hello, hello, hello. Are we live yet? Yeah, we're live. Yay, there we go. Hello, everyone. Hi. Woo, woo, woo. This is Madeline. I am Kaylee from Lately. What's going on, party people? You guys know the drill. Wherever you're dialing in from, listening in from, watching in from, drop in the chat. Hello. The weather here is good. Rub it in. Rainy, hot, whatever. Where are you? That kind of thing. Madeline, where are you?
I'm in LA, so it is beautiful.
LA, that's awesome. Okay, rub it in. Why don't you? No, I'm just kidding. Do you go by Madeline or Madeline?
Madeline.
Madeline. Okay. My second cousin is Madeline. Her mom is Kristen, who just chimed in from Colorado. Hi, folks. Hey, Lauren. Hey, Alex. I am in Stone Ridge. It is pouring rain. Hey, Layla. But that's cool because we needed it. And I had a rad day in the ghetto pool out back. Do you have one of those things? Do you have a real pool? Do you have a pool?
I don't have a pool. I'm not a pool fan, actually. I'm not a swimmer.
You either are or you aren't, right? Like it's in either way is cool. My husband doesn't like it so much, but I like to float in that it's 12 feet wide and 3 feet deep. So, me and a little noodle.
Yeah. That'll get the job done.
It gets the job done. Yeah, exactly. Hey there, Lauren. Hey, everybody. Cool. So we're gonna get started here in a second. Ankit, I need the bio. Can you forward it to me from the email from yesterday? Because I'm totally not, I don't have it together today. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So we have Madeline Mann here today. We're doing an unusual session, everybody. While everybody still piles in, remember to say where you're from and everything. Hey there, Hemayun, great to see you. We're going to talk about kind of HR-ish related stuff, getting job related stuff, questions about, your career. I used to work actually I was consulting a recruiting agency back in the day. My aunt and uncle, they worked in Washington, D.C. So it was like really fascinating like with the Pentagon, it's cool to be around that. What was interesting to me, and we'll talk about this more formally in a second as we wait for people to pile in, was that my uncle was always saying like the process here really hasn't changed fundamentally over the years. It's just more like the technology, and I wonder if you see that as well. Like, so, how people, navigate not only, I guess we have to simplify things. So there's before you get the job, right? Then there's once you have the job, and then there's getting on to the next job. And the way people handle all those things, I imagine, is different, but there must be some common threads, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say it's funny back in the day. I think one thing that really changed the game was when we introduced online applications, because before there was actually a little bit of a barrier to entry in order to even apply to a role, such as you'd print out something, maybe you'd mail it, you'd have to pay for a stamp, or you'd have to physically get your booty up and go there. So there's these barriers. So people were actually, a bit more thoughtful about when they applied. And then also companies didn't have as much volume. So from both sides, it was different in that, as someone who has been on the employer side reading these resumes, 80% of the resumes I receive are not related to the role that they're going for. Like they just are very outwardly not accurate to the role that they're pursuing. You can tell that they didn't read the job description, all of that.
It's like 101 people.
Right. And there's, I'll even put things on the job description to know whether or not they read it. And 80% of people don't. And then on the company side is when they would get, a pile of resumes, maybe they got 20 resumes of people who did it. And they would say, okay, like, do they check these boxes? Great. And it was just so much, there was less, then they had less choice. And so they were able to choose people. And on the other side, it was less bombarding of all these applications. So now you're absolutely right. It's the technology that has really shifted. And that's just one of the many pieces that has made a big difference. But I think that's the number one piece that's changed.
Awesome. So we're going to talk a lot. You guys can ask any questions you want today. I'm going to probably be asking most of them, but you're welcome to chime in, and I'll get them to Madeline's way. I think I want to talk about like marketing the self today. And really, I think people have a hard time. Well, yeah, we have a hard time promoting ourselves and high-fiving ourselves. Am I right? Wait, raise your hand if that's you. Okay. All right. Imposter syndrome sometimes creeps up, or you worry about sounding too grandiose. I think sometimes women suffer from this more than men. But I should probably start by telling you who is here today. Who is Madeline? This is important. So Madeline is an incredible human. She's the founder of Self-Made Millennial. Heard of it? She has over 500,000 subscribers and counting across a number of content channels that spans all social media platforms. She provides rapid fire, battle-tested career advice, and it's resulted in thousands of powerful testimonials and success stories. You name it, she's been everywhere. She was also named the top 50 person to follow on LinkedIn. That's pretty rad. She's also a LinkedIn learning instructor, a seasoned career coach, and Self-Made Millennial, her super brand, has been featured on Bloomberg, New York Times, Forbes, and also named a top 10 YouTube channel for job seekers, which is a very long way of saying this lady knows what she's talking about, right? Yeah, welcome, Madeline. Welcome to Lately Live, everybody.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, thank you. Did I get it right?
Oh, you got it right. Yeah,
awesome.
Perfect.
So let's talk about marketing the self. So because I think that applies to all of those phases, right, in one way or the other. What do you think is the number one barrier, and what's the advice that you find that you have to give the most to getting people to even just look at themselves in a way that maybe gives them the permission to celebrate their wins?
Yeah. So this is one of the top things I work with clients on. I call it finding the glory in your story. And one of the things that is so tough is I work with lots of people who are communications directors, digital marketers, like these people who know how to sell, how to market, how to appeal to an audience. And then when it's time for them to write a resume or jump into an interview where they have to convey their value, it's near impossible.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes. And so if anyone out there is watching this and feels like it's impossible for you, top marketers are struggling with this. So you're in good company. What I found is that we are too close to our own story. We are sitting in the bottle and we can't read the label. We are so, we have so many emotions and feelings about the different things that we've done in our career, and we value certain things about our past, which actually makes it very difficult to put ourselves in that third person perspective and view our experience only from an outside perspective, because the amount of things you've done in your career, the amount of things that your audience has done in your careers, it's so vast and so nuanced that we're in this information overload. And I call it our Wikipedia page, where we start putting down everything on our LinkedIn, everything on our resume, like a Wikipedia page, like everyone needs to know everything, when really it should be a sales page. And it should be a lot shorter and just hit on the high value points. And those are the things I work closely with people on, is to make sure, boom, you're making a sales page, not a Wikipedia page.
That's super smart. I was just thinking back to my experience working with the outplacement agency and doing a lot of resume writing, which, I know that has evolved technologically. And one of the things that they were teaching us, and I wonder if this is still true, is that so usually robots or machines are reading resumes these days as opposed to humans, and at the time, and so it was like looking for different check boxes. But eventually, when the human does get the resume, they're glancing. It's a quick glance. And so you want to stop them with visual cues, the sale, to your point, not the Wikipedia, the sales cues. And those can be numbers, are a good one, right? And what that would encourage people to do is to then quantify their successes. So as opposed to, I managed, this team, it would be like, I managed a team of 100 people and we increased sales 2,000% over 5 years, something like that, right? So you're giving value you're talking about what the achievement is and then putting into perspective with numbers, right? So a couple things, in I don't know if that's salesy enough, but that's what I was thinking as like a sales pitch of yourself.
That is such a good, tangible way to really to articulate it, right? Is exactly like how do we make the eyes stop? And you're absolutely right. Is most companies don't actually use resume scanning software.
Oh, they don't. So that's good.
Yeah. So I mean,
humans.
some companies absolutely do, and that's important too. But what you said about how humans are scanning very quickly as well, I mean, that's really what we're optimizing for. And if you optimize for the humans, the if they are using software, that'll follow. And I love that what you said about quantifying, because it's interesting how the eye stops at the numbers. Like a lot of people, you might know copywriting, and you might know that any number under 10, you're supposed to write out the word. I say buck convention on for a lot of things in resumes, incomplete sentences, writing the number 8 instead of writing it out. Like all of those things will actually help you to catch their eye faster. So don't worry about like having to have that perfect convention, unless of course you're going for like a role where you think that is going to be super essential.
Right, like copywriter or something.
Right, exactly.
So one thing I just want to touch on there was the shoemaker has no shoes. We joke about this all the time, and as you're pointing it out, like some of the best quote marketers in the world are some of the worst at selling themselves. So the good news is you're not alone, everyone. And we find this all the time because our customers are marketers, Madeline, for the most part, and they're always, even people at some of the, I know you know this, Fortune 500 companies are literally asking us questions like, well, how many times a day should I post on Twitter? And I'm like, it's just the funniest thing, because marketing, whether it's a brand or yourself, it's a fluid experience, and there's a lot of knowledge that I think people have to be reminded of. It's kind of like losing weight, right? Everybody always wants to know diet tips, but the math is always the same. It's calories in, calories out. And marketing and in marketing yourself, like, again, there's these fundamentals that you're talking about, right? And they're pretty simple, but there's the barrier is really ourselves. So the catalyst is what I wanted to touch on, and to talk about, like, what are either the tricks that you do to get your clients to see themselves in that different way, or at least advise them to try to do with the help of others?
Yeah, so I have a system called the Glory Formula, which basically takes people through 5 different steps to really understand exactly what the employers are looking for. What so many people do when they are thinking about finding the glory in their story, making their LinkedIn pop, all that stuff, what they first start with is themselves. What do I love about my story? What makes me interesting and unique? Nope. I do not do that. I say, no, we're starting with the end goal. Just like you do in marketing, you start with the customer. You don't start with, what do I love about the product? You start about what problem are we solving for them? What are they actually going to want to hear about? They don't care, about what your favorite little feature is. Like, really address their need. And so that's what the Glory Formula is all about. It's about starting with the end goal, working your way back. And I use this series of questions that, like, it's like 8 questions that tease out each step of the way to make sure that you are not just sitting on one of those accomplishments, like you said, where it was like, I led a team. It's like, no, but like, what were the downstream effects of that? Like, what were the major things? And then you go, wow, okay, there's so much more here than what I thought. And so really being methodical about that process helps you to get outside of this space that we're in, and really helps you to define what makes you interesting to companies.
So that's a good trigger point there, that I wanted to key into, is the downstream effects, just so people can think about that for a second. Like, what were, my less exciting way is like, what were the results of your actions, right? And then how did they affect other people, which is always the case in a corporate environment as well, right? So you often want to prove that you can affect change for not only like your little corner of that world, but like your team, the company at large, right? All those things. And I find personally, like, I need I need that mirror, Madeline. I don't know how everybody else feels, but like whether it's hiring someone like you or just chatting with a friend or my husband, I need catalysts in my life to have that other perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no shame in that, by the way. I mean, I think like people kind of get nervous about going outside um, for help on, especially describing themselves, right?
Yeah. Oh
And
my gosh. Well, Kate, I had career, so I am a career strategist. I had a career coach when I was doing a
you
job
did.
search because I knew how cloudy your judgment gets when you are so close to the situation, when there's emotions. It's just a best practice. I currently spend thousands of dollars a month on coaches who coach me, not because I'm necessarily ignorant to what I need to do, but it's just we need those external voices because we're often when someone's looking in from the outside, they can read the label. You're sitting in the bottle, they can read the label, and you're able to move like wicked fast.
I love the idea of taking your own medicine, which I find it's hard to do. I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were asking me for advice on a podcast. And then as I said out loud, I was like, occurring to me that this advice I give people all the time, I really need to give to myself in this moment. Right? It's so funny. And just the act of talking in that way, getting it out there. One of the tricks we talk about as far as marketing brands go is I always say vomit and then edit. Right? Okay. And it applies to the self as well, right? So you want to just the first part is just like is getting it out there, whether it's on a resume page, right? Whether it sounds like, let's imagine like you want to move your career or you want to move up in your career. Is the first step really just thinking, making that outline, like thinking about what you want to do? Or what if you don't know exactly, but you need change?
Right. So I talk about this idea of not hitchhiking through your career, where essentially what so many of us do is when we know what we're doing right now is not the right thing, we're like, oh, I got to get out of here. So what we do is we go stand on the corner, we stick out our thumb, we apply to a bunch of different companies, a bunch of different roles, and whoever picks us up, that's our next career move. And sometimes you luck out. Sometimes they drive you to a place, they drive you to Disneyland. You're like, wow, this was amazing. This totally worked out. Other times it's a total detour and it ends up just being this. Then you spend years and years of your life, again, doing something that maybe isn't even terrible, but it's just, for a fact, it's not your right path. And that's what we do when we don't take control of our careers. So I do a process called like a one-page career vision where it sounds really simple, but it's kind of similar. Like if you have read I think it's called like the one-page marketing.
Sounds like an ICP or something, right?
Yeah, where you're really able to create a plan. But the work that goes into creating this plan is deep. And it really helps you to take a look at yourself and really understand what are your values, what are your strengths, what drives you, what is the market demand saying is going to be jobs that are going to have increasing salaries, increasing openings, so that in a few years you're not saying, oh wow, my job is now, there's so few openings that I'm now going to have to completely pivot. All of those things, keeping those into consideration. And I think one thing that people need to know is that you're not going to go to like a 1-hour seminar or, do like a coaching session with me and be like, I know what my path is. Like, it's hard work and there's a lot of steps, but once you do them, you really have this amazing clarity and you're able to move so fast in your career.
Yeah, so our friend Brian Kramer is here, by the way, and he has remade himself recently, and I think more than once actually. And he's a coach now, and he's chiming in the chat, which is great. But it's a great example of a human who took the time to do a lot of self-assessment and figure out. Not the hitchhiker way, but that it's a slow path. And it starts with saying out loud, this isn't working, right? And that doesn't matter where you are. I mean, it could be if you end up working for other people and then moving to work for yourself, like was the case for me, or maybe it's the role you're in, you need to move up or lateral or change careers altogether. But I find that that's the first, and it doesn't have to be negative necessarily, like, but this isn't working. Okay. Right? Once you admit that, then the lights are on, the wheels are turning.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things when I talk with people who are in that position. It's really that it's helping them to believe that there is a right next path for them, because it is so confusing and it can be really tough, especially if you're coming from a work situation that was really not ideal. And I actually posted today on LinkedIn about how, sometimes people will just glorify be your own boss. That's the solution. Just be your own boss, which I don't know about you, but like being a boss is a really hard work, right? Like, like you run a business, like I don't think, and to correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you would recommend running a business to anyone, right?
No, it's torture. I mean, I wouldn't do it any other way, but like you have to have the stomach for this.
Right. And so I don't think like, I run my own business, you run your own business. Like, I don't think that either of us wear it as like a badge of like, we chose a path that was superior to anyone else. It's more of like, this was our own path. And I think so many people, they just have a series of bad bosses. And so they think I need to work for myself because I've never seen what a good boss is. Instead, what we need to do is we need to really understand what our values are, what our standards are in the job interview. And it's so interesting because when we hold our standards in the job interview and we're actually vetting the other side, it doesn't push them away. It actually makes the company more interested in us.
That's so true. So we had multiple employees, so I'm not going to call anybody out, but multiple employees who came from situations of really bad bosses this year. And it reminded me of my own path, of course. But it was so surprising to me how poorly people can be treated and how much it affects them, how much they hang on to that, and how important it is for us on the hiring side to really think about culture fit. And I'm not even sure, like, is that a legal thing to talk about in HR? I want to know about that.
Culture fit is now kind of like a dirty word.
It is, right? Like, what's the better way to say that? Like,
you can say, well, people have been saying things like culture add, where it's like, are they someone who contributes like, good, fresh ideas to the business? Like, if they someone who adds to the culture, who enhances it. So that's been kind of like a new way of saying it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's just so funny because like we've figured out that that's everything for us, like and intelligence. Experience actually almost never matters, but the culture fit is make or break. But then I thought a lot about what's the onus of the leadership to undo the mental trauma that people have undergone by being in poor employment situations, right? Where it was really soul crushing, and anyways, it was a hard thing to navigate for me personally. And I'm glad we did, everybody seems to be rocking and rolling, which was good to do, but it took me back, as an individual. And I thought, wow, what is this? Is this a role? Is this something that workplaces deal with often, especially when you don't have an HR department? Like,
yeah, it's so common. And it is interesting when you do hire someone new to not jump into the work right away and to actually ask them questions like, what was your last boss like? What was the work processes like? What was the culture like at the company? And if you have those conversations explicitly, you'll realize of like, oh, that's why that person like kept pinging me every morning. Oh, it's because they had this anxiety that like you were waiting for an email or, whatever it is. Like, you notice all these interesting things that are ingrained in them. And then also you notice these things that are ingrained in you when they react like, oh, I didn't know you wanted that. And you're like, of course I want that. But it's just because, there's a certain way of working together that you're accustomed to, that the people at the company are, and then you just bring in this whole different experience. It really is. It's so interesting to really have those conversations up front.
That's the best thing too, is the conversations. And it's hard. We've been a team that has worked from home from the very beginning. So pretty good at Slack and Zoom and all the things. But every once in a while something breaks, and it's always communication related, and it can take us a little while to get back up on that horse. And I don't find that when we're in person, it necessarily solves the problem either. Because then there's a whole host of other time-wasty things that go on, frankly, and because communication is our specialty, and well, obviously it's yours as well. It's fascinating to me that as human beings, we need to constantly be, just like we were saying with marketing, we constantly need to remind ourselves and remind others, number one, what the objective is, right? As you said, where do I, what's at the end game here? Like, so then backtrack there. And because it's not, for example, make this person wrong and have them have a crappy day and don't stop working for you. That's not the end game, right? The end game is give them the tools to succeed, to do better work for you. And to, I guess, create an environment where people feel comfortable having those conversations with either their superiors or with the I'm frozen.
Yeah.
Is anyone else frozen?
Just me. Okay, I can hear you now. Perfect. It just cut off for like 2 seconds.
Yeah. Well, I was just talking, I guess I'm interested. Do you find that you have to coach your employees or your clients and their employees, or on just general communications on a day-to-day work, like not just moving on and getting the next place, but like, what's that like in your world?
One of the top things I've coached people on is really helping them to communicate with their boss on their priorities and being overloaded. So one thing I've noticed is that as someone, and you manage people, I manage people, you give them assignments, you ask them to do things, but to be honest, it's not always perfectly clear exactly how much that workload is, how long it's going to take, especially if they're doing new things that they haven't done before. And so, in companies, you'll often get more and more work piled on you. And it's actually up to the employee to say, okay, here are the 3 things I'm working on today. This is going to take up the full day. You just added a 4th thing. Which thing should I reprioritize in order to make sure I can accomplish these things in the right order and with the right priorities? And what I tell a lot of people, when they tell them that, they go, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do that. Like, I just say yes and I do it. And what I've found is that when people actually take that advice of working with their boss, working with their manager to help prioritize things and manage those expectations, it leads to a boss that respects them, who says our communication is very clear. It leads to an employee who then isn't leaving the company in 3 months because they're not completely burned out. And so It really is, it's actually best for both worlds when we have those open conversations.
So noted, employees. I know I waterboard you. But what's so funny about that is, like, I was in a position where I actually said that to a boss once, and there was retaliation, and it was a terrible situation. I left anyways. It has nothing to do with that. But I relate to the fear that you're convey right now. So, like, I want to pledge to be the boss that does not make people fear me for bringing up that conversation. And for our customers who are here as well, I want to encourage them to be able to have that conversation, with your bosses as well. And to figure out, like, there has to be a way for everybody to validate their worth and their respect, like you just said. But even more importantly and more fundamental to the business is, like, if the leader doesn't understand what it takes to complete the work, then the whole ship is going to fail, right? It's just basic math in that scenario.
Yeah.
So we gotta ask, and we have to volunteer the answers. Yeah. Awesome. So I asked most of the questions today. Seems like everybody was pretty good to tag along, which is awesome. Madeline is amazing. What's happening in your life? Do you have new things coming out? Where else can people connect with you? Where would you like them to connect with you? Anything you want to tell us about?
Absolutely. So definitely follow me on LinkedIn, Madeline Mann, YouTube, Self-Made Millennial. I have hundreds of videos that are going to help you make your career defining move. And then if you're interested in what I was saying earlier about the glory formula, about finding the glory in your story, all those things, you can go to standoutresume.com. I have resources there. I have a full webinar there that you can watch. You can really hear what I'm talking about and understand the components so that you can also find the glory in your story and really be able to convey your value.
I love that. And my team posted some of those links in the chat, so you guys can do that there, and we'll add them as well in our follow-up. There's a YouTube channel for you guys. So Madeline, we are super just honored that you took some time with us, because you're a star. And I'm so glad we had this conversation, because I don't think a lot of marketing companies invite career experts to hang with their people. So I'm so glad that you were willing to do that with us. Thank you.
This was my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right, guys, rock and roll. I'm Kate Lee from Lately, Madeline Mann. We'll see you guys next Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, for something else fabulous.